Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at an incredibly exciting new release by Rapido. After many years of waiting, I am finally reviewing this. It is the Rapido Trains Stirling single from the Great Northern Railway. And I've wanted one of these models for years, about 10 years in fact. So this is not a brand new model. Rapido produced this originally a good few years ago now as an exclusive model for the National Railway Museum and their model shop locomotion models. And I certainly was aware of this back then, and I wanted one, but I couldn't afford it. I just considered it way too expensive. I don't think I could have actually literally afforded it either. So the price to customers back then was £199, which by today's standard isn't that surprising. There are plenty of models that are £200 these days. But if we adjust for inflation, in today's money, that £199 is about £270. Now, obviously, for 2015, that was an unprecedented amount of money, and as such, yeah, I decided I couldn't afford that. But then fast forward to now, we have the model back, and Rapido have produced this not as an exclusive this time, but as a general release, which has gone out to lots of different retailers, and at a more affordable price if we adjust for inflation. So the RRP for this, at least for the DCC ready one, is £249.95, so that's cheaper than the original £270 approximately. But of course it's even cheaper at the retailers, at least the retailers that offer a discount, at about £212.45. So that's really good to see. The second run of a model much cheaper than the first. That's not all that usual, so really glad to see that. And it has meant, of course, that I've deemed this affordable now to the point where I can get one to review it. So after 10 years, finally I have one in my hands. Now, yes, this is cheaper than the original release, but this has still cost me over £200. So obviously I'm expecting an awful lot from this model. And do you know what? From what I've heard, I think I will get what I expect this time. People say that this is the best model they've ever seen. It was called the model of the decade, the model of the millennia, I think, referring to the 2000s. So hopefully this will be every bit as good as people have said it is. So if you'd like to try one of these, or if you're interested in browsing what's available, I do have affiliate links down in the description. But for now, after 10 years of waiting, let's take a look at Rapido's Stirling single. So at last, a modern single-wheeler. And the name single-wheeler is a bit odd, isn't it? Obviously it's referring to the fact that we've just got a single pair of driving wheels here. But it's not just a single wheel, there's obviously two wheels. So what it should be called is a single pair of wheeler or something, or maybe a double wheeler. But either way, I love single wheelers, but there's precious few single wheelers, at least modern ones, available in model form. I think this will be my first. Nevertheless, I've collected every other single wheeler I possibly can. I've got all of the old Triang Hornby ones. I got the Bachmann Emily, which was very interesting. And I even made my own, the LNWR Problem class. I just love them. But this will be my first modern, hopefully super detailed, well, certainly super detailed, single wheeler that I've ever gotten, and I'm very excited. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the one I went for is Stirling single number 1, 1930s condition. So this is the locomotive in the later years of its life, and it's the DC silent one, and it's 947001. And I think with that, we are pretty much ready to open this up and see what's inside. So, single wheeler, interesting shaped box. I wonder if the loco and tender are going to be on top of each other, or maybe not. Maybe they've just got lots of packaging around them, padding. Let's see. Instead of speculating, right, I like this. This looks like a hefty booklet, a very hefty one. Right, Stirling single number 1, Great Northern, owner's manual. I read that in a strange order. Okay, so we've got a contents. We've got, read this bit first, it's been produced with as much prototype fidelity as we could possibly include on a model. Yeah, so I've heard. Lots of delicate small bits. Yeah, take care, blah, blah, blah. Best places to grab the model are at the centre of the large splashes and the cab. Right, that's very useful information to have, and don't attempt to pick it up by grabbing the brake rigging alongside the main drivers. Yeah, certainly not. Right, prototype history then, over the page. Yeah, we've got loads of information here. Differences on the second run models. Right, so have they been changed? Right, so yes, the 30s variant, that's the one I've got, includes the small tender from the White City Exposition, so that's a new tender, very interesting. And it does say that you can't put the new tender, I guess, with the old loco because the tender full plate will jam. I think that's what they're saying there. Anyway, attaching the tender over the page. So this is a push together loco to tender connection with electrical contacts. We'll give that a try, see how that works. Splashers. So apparently there's very little clearance between the lead bogie wheels and the decorative splashers. And so they've actually made these splashers adjustable so that if you've got broad, realistic curves, you can pull those splashers in a bit and make them more realistic. Wow, I wonder how many people really care about the exact position of the splashers, or indeed would even notice. But great to have that option. Right, initial checks running in, so yeah, that's fine. We're going to run this in as usual. Couplings and additional parts, so NEM couplers, etc, etc. We've got some, yeah, we've got a diagram over on the other side. So buffer beam details, various chains, vacuum pipes, very useful to have. Servicing the model, that's fine. Have we got some diagrams here? Yeah, we have. So here's how to remove the body of the tender where the DCC socket is, and it says that this takes a 21-pin decoder. This is a different tender, so this is the large tender, which works a bit differently. Seems like the screw locations are a bit different. And then DCC operation, DCC functions. There's a list of the functions. Wow, there's a lot here. And then just some sort of housekeepings and such, plus some photos of the Stirling single. Like to see that. Here we go. The parts diagram. So this is the locomotive, believe it or not. Yeah, lots and lots of parts. You can see a bit about the mechanism here. It looks as though we've got proper bearings on the axles, hopefully, or are those bushings? I'm not sure. There's the motor. We've got a flywheel for the motor as well, and an awful lot of different detail parts. Can't wait to see it. And then we've got the small tender exploded diagram. That's the one I've got. Even that is remarkably complex, isn't it? There's the large tender for those interested. You won't see that today, but that's what it looks like. And then we've got a timeline. That's very interesting. So it starts with Patrick Stirling being born, and it ends with Rapido Trains UK releases the second run of the Stirling single. Excellent that those are in the same category. There we go. All right, lots of info there. But let's leave that behind and take a look. Here we go. Well padded, lots of foam. And there she is. Wow. Already, I can't even see it properly, but already I can tell this is stunning. And I can't wait to see the paint job. Yeah, really can't wait to see that. Right, lifting. Oh, yes, quite a tight fit, but that's good. Any accessories or anything in here? Nope, so it's all in with the loco then. Yeah, I can see it actually. Right. Even this is well padded. Look at that. So hopefully this loco will have survived unscathed. Right. What do we get with this then? Accessories. Seems like there's quite a lot. Right, so yeah, the main thing is these splashers. So these are those adjustable splashers, which you can set into the right position according to the size of your curves. Oh, that sounded a bit naughty, didn't it? But you know what I mean. Then we've got the fully painted pipe work here. That looks great. We've got the real chains with a lovely chrome finish to them on hooks. That's really nice to see included. Plus we've got these screw link couplings here, which are the fully movable type. So yeah, loads of accessories for you to fit. But we need to look at the loco. So here we go, Stirling single. Hopefully they've done a sterling job of it this time round. There we go, get that one in early so that I don't keep trying to cram it in, although I'm sure I'll say it again very soon. These are wrapped up. I think they're disconnected actually. So we'll start with the loco. Goodness gracious. Yeah, that is a gorgeous finish. Very luxurious, but not overstated, not too glossy. And the green is rich as well. Incredible. Right. Lifting, is it heavy? Yeah, it's reasonably heavy, I would say. Here it is. Wow. It's tiny, actually. Yeah, really small. It's just occurred to me that I've never actually held a Stirling single. I think the Bachmann Emily is a bit bigger than this, I would guess, because this feels a lot smaller. But yeah, this is beautiful. The paint job is very complex, actually. The loco is also all metal, as far as I can tell. The boiler is certainly metal, the running plate is as well, and of course that's absolutely essential. Looking underneath, we've got a traditional front bogie. Doesn't look like that's got pickups, but the set of driving wheels, that is locked, which suggests that those are driven, and so are the rear wheels, so those are driven as well. So that's the same trick that Bachmann used on their Emily model, just to improve traction, and it means that you can put weight towards the back of the engine and improve its hauling capabilities. I wonder who did it first, which one came out first, the Bachmann Emily or the Rapido Stirling? Or did they come up with the idea independently? I don't know. But yeah, that is stunning. Now put that to one side. Let's have a look at the tender then, which I suppose is a new tool aspect of this model. Just carefully remove the plastic wrap and pull it out. Even the black on the top has a beautiful finish to it. And here is this tender. And you know what? I think this is metal too. The underframe isn't, but the body I think is. So there's good weight to this tender as well. That is unusual. I think I did come across one die-cast tender before. I forget which one it was now. But yeah, this is another one. Very, very unusual to see that. And I suppose I should hold them next to each other. I won't try and couple them in midair. I'll wait till they're on a flat surface for that. But there you have it. How absolutely gorgeous is that? Very is the answer. It was a rhetorical question, but I'll answer it anyway. My word. Right, closer look at this in just a second. But in the meantime, let's have a bit of background on the Stirling single in real life. The Stirling single was designed by Patrick Stirling, and it originated from the Great Northern Railway. 53 of these single-wheelers were built in total between 1870 and 1895, so quite a long time between them. The main characteristic, of course, was the massive single set of driving wheels, hence the name Stirling Single. These wheels were 8 foot in diameter, leading to another nickname for these locos, the 8-footer. Driving wheels this size allowed for unprecedented speeds for the time. The top speed was about 85 miles per hour, which must have been terrifying in the 1870s. This made them ideal for express services, which they duly carried out between York and London. They were also notable in that they had outside cylinders, a feature that we're all familiar with today, of course, but locomotives of this era usually had inside cylinders. Having them mounted outside the frames like this made maintenance much simpler, and this also allowed for the boiler to be mounted lower down, provided some much needed stability for those higher speeds. Inevitably though, the Stirling singles were eventually outperformed by newer locomotives, specifically the Atlantics of the late 1800s and 1910s. And while some Stirlings were rebuilt with improvements, withdrawal ultimately began in 1899, and by 1916 every example had been withdrawn. Today, every member of the class, very sadly, has been scrapped. What a pity that is, with the exception of the first built. That's this one, number 1. And today it's part of the National Collection at the NRM in York. So there she is, up close and personal for you, Rapido's Stirling single. And wow, I don't really think there's an awful lot for me to say. I think the loco, frankly, speaks for itself. But just because this is what I need to do, I will say this loco is stunning. The level of detail is incredible, the paintwork is top notch, and also, more critically, the build quality is excellent as well. I think the Jones Goods was the best built Rapido loco I'd ever seen when I reviewed that. I think now this one will have trumped it. Yeah, this one is even better. It is incredible. Nevertheless, a couple of slight issues. First of all, you'll notice I don't have the splashers fitted to this model. And reading about them in the instructions, I thought that sounds like a cool feature. I'm going to test that out. I'm going to demonstrate the adjustability of them. Well, yeah, can't do that because they've forgotten to include the screws. They're not fitted to the model and they are not in the accessories bag. So yeah, that's spoilt that feature a little bit for me. It's a great idea. I love giving the customer the option to make the compromise between accuracy and practicality, but only if they remember to include all of the bits. So I think personally, I would have preferred they just fit the splashers at the factory with perhaps a little bit more clearance than is realistic, because too much clearance is more realistic than no splashers, which is what I was left with. So yeah, pity about that. The other minor thing, well, maybe not that minor, we'll have to see, is that there's too much springing on the front bogie. As you can see, I can push the loco down here, and the front bogie spring is able to push the entire loco up, which means a couple of things. First of all, you can actually see here the driving wheels are lifted off the track, which isn't great. The second thing that it means is that there's a lot of weight borne by the front bogie wheels, and of course those are not driven. So the effects that that will have on traction is that it will reduce it. So yeah, I would say the spring is a bit too strong here. So a different spring, or perhaps trimming the existing spring, maybe that would work. Yeah, that would probably be the fix for that. Anyway, I think those would be the only issues I've noticed with this. Otherwise, it is a terrific model. So it's almost all metal, even the cab is made of metal, and as such it weighs 252 grams, which is more than the Bachmann Precedent, another die-cast model of a similar size, and it's more than Hornby's J36, a larger loco that, also with a die-cast boiler. And despite being die-cast, the quality of the moulding has not been spoiled. The riveting on the running plate looks excellent, and particularly on the tender, all the rivets have come out looking beautiful and very, very fine. So the die-cast has been nothing but positive here, and a single wheeler is very, very difficult to make. It's tricky to make them decent haulers, so hopefully all that weight will certainly aid it in that. Right, let's talk about the decoration to start with then. So first of all, the finish is amazing. Must be because of the die casting, but I assume they've also put a bit of a coat of satin over that. Yeah, perfect satin finish, not too glossy, not too matte, really, really like that. The banding on the boiler looks wonderful, and in fact the lining is incredible on this model. So the little gaps in the main splasher, those are all lined. We've got the gold lining over the main splasher. The running plate and the steps and such attached to it, these are all fully lined, as you can see, and done very, very precisely too. Lots of the model is lined, specifically the sort of framework around the smoke box as well. My goodness, the side of the cab, and what an odd cab this is with the curved roof. All of that has been lined as well. That's quite a tricky shape to line, I would say. Then we've got the cylinders, which are fully painted. As you can see, there's even detail picked out on the crosshead. What attention to detail that is. Then we've got all the details picked out on the smoke box door as well. Looks amazing, and the buffer beams are fully detailed as well. Red paint, of course. We've got the running number on there, black buffer housings, and then the chrome finished buffers, which are sprung. There we go, and yeah, those are made of metal. Now, that's the thing, the metal parts on this model, on the whole, look a lot better than we've seen from Rapido in the past. So remember the handrails on the Jones Goods? Those were supposed to be a kind of chrome colour, and yeah, they kind of ruined it by painting them instead. Look at these. These are so much better. Incredible. That has made a huge difference. I'm so glad they didn't opt to kind of give these a matte painted finish. This is miles better. The safety valve bonnet here, yeah, it's not quite as good. Again, I think that could have been better, but I think that's certainly less egregious than handrails with a painted finish would have been. So yeah, overall, much, much better finish, and the handrails on the side of the cab are the same. Yeah, those look great. Right, goodness me, I'm not looking, well, I am looking forward to it, but there's an awful lot to get to when it comes to detail, so let's try and get started. So, down at the bottom, we've got full brake rigging. We've got beautifully painted wheels with the axles blackened. That looks great. There is even detailed pipework. It's going to be hard to see this, but there is detailed pipework behind the driving wheels, which you can just about see, and I'm sure when it's in motion that will be more visible. Not seen that before. We've got all these little detail parts here. We've got a representation of the valve gear between the frames, which you can only just see from the outside, but underneath you can really, really see it. That is great. And a few separately fitted parts, including separately fitted lamp brackets. The front bogie wheels are awesome. We've got the little bolts between some of the spokes. Really like the way that looks. And then up above here, we've got various separately fitted mechanical rods, as you can see. Then we've got the separately fitted smoke box dart, which is a nice straight fit, plus a beautifully manufactured chimney, which does fit into a kind of hole in the top of the smoke box, but the fit on that is better than we've seen on different models in the past, so that's good. Likewise, the safety valve bonnet, behind which we have the tiny little separately fitted whistle. Can't say whether that's metal or not. I don't really want to touch it, frankly, but it does seem to have a decent quality finish to it, which I like. Bit of a join between the upper boiler and what I assume is the Loco chassis. So that is a little noticeable on a model that's otherwise absolutely perfect, but I'd say that's probably the only thing I've noticed. In terms of the cab, you can see we've got fully glazed windows, which look nice and realistic, and they also look realistic on the inside as well, where the hinges have been modelled. Wow. And the cab detail is astonishing as well. We've got all of the different parts separately fitted inside here, controls and such, pipework painted, turning taps, those are separately painted. We've even got decoration on the gauges, which looks incredibly fine. Doesn't seem like we've got a firebox flicker effect on here because the firebox door is modelled in the closed position. And there's the adjustable tender full plate, which falls down between Loco and tender, of course. And this is what the Loco to tender coupling looks like. Takes a bit of jiggling to get these two coupled, but once they're together, it does seem to be a good solid connection. And I am not going to separate these if I can help it. So yeah, I'm going to leave those together just because I did try to separate them and it takes quite a bit of force. So I think I'm going to leave that as is. Right, here's a look at the tender, and this tender, once again, the body is made of metal. And you might say, well, what's the point? And yeah, I get that, you know, it doesn't need to be that heavy. Plastic probably would have been okay if that was cheaper, but it does have a few advantages. First of all, it feels quality. You know, you can't argue when you've got this tender in your hands and you feel the weight of it and the cold metal to the touch. You feel that that is better than the plastic. Also, if they'd made it out of plastic, there's a possibility that the green painted onto the plastic wouldn't have matched the green painted onto the metal. So the fact that they're both metal means that the colour matching is spot on. So yeah, really good choice to make that metal, I think, especially given how much this cost. Anyway, decoration on the tender, goodness gracious. Yeah, beautiful lining, great northern lettering, expertly applied, as usual from Rapido, really. And then we've got the underframe. There's a lot of underframe. Does that make sense? Yeah, the underframe is very, very prominent on this. I think it's because of the small size of the body on this small tender, but it's an odd look. Nevertheless, it's been produced in the kind of brown colour with all of the lining and such, and these very large, in this case, arches, which afford you a really good view of the brake rigging and the wheels, and also the brake blocks, which are massive on these. There's one slight issue with the tender that I forgot to mention, and that is the rear brakes are not fitted quite right. You can see this one is touching the wheel here, and as such we've got a bit of a stiff wheel on the tender. It feels stiff, but when I push the tender along, you can see the wheels do actually turn thanks to the weight of the tender. So it's not as though the wheels are going to be sticking, but they may detract a bit from the pulling power of the Loco. Bit frightened to try and adjust that in case it comes off and becomes another brake rigging issue, but yeah, I thought I'd mention that. On the front of the tender, we've got some separately fitted controls as well as much more beautiful lining and other decoration. This is the extent of the coal load, although I suppose if you did want to fill the coal load right up to the top, you could use this area at the back over the water tank. Then we've got the water filler cap over here. Again, I think that's a separate part. And then around the back, we've got loads more detail here. Separately fitted lamp brackets, all nice and straight, which is nice to see after the bullied leader. And another very well detailed buffer beam, complete with sprung buffers and guard irons. We've just got the one NEM coupling fitted to this model into a NEM pocket, which has got a bit of springing, as you can see. And of course, in the accessories bag, there's another NEM tension lock that you can fit onto the front bogie if you want. So there you have it, the Rapido Stirling single. Now, the detail on this is insane, but it usually is from Rapido. What has really stood out to me here is the excellence of the design. I think the challenges of the Stirling single have been marvellously overcome by Rapido, plus the build quality. Yeah, no glue marks, no wonky parts, nothing wrong with this at all, and high quality build materials as well. What a difference that makes. And you ask, is this worth £200? 212, that's what I paid. Yes, it is. I think it is. It's a lot of money, and don't get me wrong, affording that is not easy, but when you get it and it's as perfect as this looks, there's very little to complain about at that price. That is assuming this Loco is a good runner. I've heard that they are, but I want to see it for myself. So with that, let's get it down onto the track, let's give it its first test, and also let's take a look at the mechanism. So there she is down onto the track, the absolutely sublime looking Rapido Stirling single. And I've already filmed the initial testing and performance, and I'll show you all that in just a second. After that though, I did a bit of a deep dive into the mechanism, and that's what we're going to jump into now. So on the whole, yeah, this is a great mechanism, as we're going to see. What does let it down a bit is the serviceability. There is some form over function going on here. It's a well-built mechanism, but in years to come, if I want to sort of clean this out, access the pickups to clean them, maybe the bearings likewise, it's not going to be fun at all. But anyway, let's talk pickups. So it's only the Loco's front bogie wheels that actually don't have pickups on them. Every other wheel on the model does. So the Loco driving wheels have traditional wiper pickups on them, and the tender axles have these bus bars going between them, which means that every tender wheel picks up through the axles. Here's a closer look at the drawbar. It is similar to what we've seen in the past from Rapido, or I suppose this could have been the first to do it if this predates other UK Rapido models, which it does. But yeah, it's an 8-pin connector, as you can see, and there are clips at the side which hold the two together. And I found that these clips are very, very strong, so you can't just pull this thing apart. I mean, you can, but it requires a lot of force and it does not feel good. I may have tried that. So yeah, if you want to separate the two, do it upside down, ease one of those side clips away, and then the two kind of come apart much more easily. Anyway, I wanted to have a look at the gearbox on this Loco, because obviously if you're driving two axles with different wheel diameters, then it's not as simple as it may seem, because the two wheels actually have to rotate at different speeds in order to look right on the rails. But unfortunately, I could not get this base keeper off. It is screwed on and it did come loose, but to get it off, I would, I think, have to remove all of this brake rigging. Plus the pipework appears to be fitted to the base keeper plate as well, which again would make it very difficult to remove. Now, I did remove brake rigging on the Jones goods to get to that mechanism, and it was an absolute nightmare. So I've decided not to reprise that performance today, and I'm just not going to bother. So yeah, real lack of serviceability here. In years to come, you will want to sort of lubricate the gears here. You'll want to clean the axles, add fresh lubricant to the bearings, clean the pickups. That's not easy to do with this, unfortunately. Same with the Jones goods, actually. But we can see just by looking in the side of the axle here that we do have proper bearings fitted to the drivers, which is really good to see. Right, here's how you do the body removal then. So you need to remove the two outer screws around the front cylinders, that's not too bad. And then at the back, buried among the pipework, there are two more screws. Again, this is not ideal. You do need a pretty specialist screwdriver to get right in there and undo those screws. But once they are undone, the chassis comes out quite easily. So here is the chassis, quite nicely designed. You can see we've got this rat's nest of wiring here, which means that actually the pipework I saw, or what I thought was pipework, behind the driving wheels actually wasn't. That was the wiring. But I think because the wiring has been left with this sort of copper colour, it does almost look like pipework, so that it's actually not too unrealistic looking. I mean, it fooled me, didn't it? So yeah, that's not too bad. Also, I've noticed that there is an LED amongst this rat's nest of wiring as well. So we do have firebox lighting. I'll show you that later on, even though the firebox door is closed. But you do kind of just get a bit of light leakage around the door, which is quite a pleasing effect, actually. Like I say, I'll show you that later. Here's the motor. This is a really good motor based on its performance. I assume it's going to be a 5-pole motor as well, and it does have a little flywheel fitted to it as well, which is good to see. And that's coupled to a drive shaft which drives a worm drive a bit further down. Right, so to chip this you need to remove the tender body as the instructions showed, and exactly as described in the instructions, removing the two screws at the back releases the body. And it's very simple in here. You've got the 21-pin DCC decoder socket, and then you've got this bank of 0.5 farad capacitors, so very high capacity. They're only rated for 2.7 volts though, so I don't know what these are for. These can't be taking the full 12 volts, even if they were in series. That wouldn't add up to 12, would it? So yeah, I'm not sure what those are for. Maybe they are just to smoothen out the lighting. That's possible. Otherwise, not entirely sure. And there is a pre-fitted speaker below this board as well, so sound fitting this is really nice and simple. Then the gauging comes in at 14.3 to 14.4 back to back, which is bang on the standard. So yeah, generally really good quality mechanism, and it's easy to chip, that's the main thing. Less easy to service though. Anyway, that's that. Let me jump back in time now and show you how the performance went. Right, moment of truth. With some trepidation, I'm going to give this its first test. So, forwards direction. Is there life here at all? Let's see. Turning up. Oh, what a beautiful start. And look at that, all of the wheels moving in sync, even the rear wheels. So the gearing's spot on. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's just running beautifully straight out of the box, just like actually the Jones Goods did. And obviously it's going to get fully run in, but let's just recognise that this is running spot on straight out of the box. Creeping along, and it's very, very quiet as well. I can hardly hear a thing coming from it. Oh, and it's so beautiful as well. The outside cylinders, the massive 8-foot drivers, in real life of course, not in model form, just all come together to make this look sublime as it creeps along. But of course, creeping along is not what these Stirling singles were known for, so let's try it a bit faster. Let's give it half power, see what that looks like. Alright, so it's not dreadfully speedy. What about in reverse? Nice. So actually, the gearing is very sensible given the size of that driving wheel. It's quite difficult to, well, I found anyway, that it was quite difficult to get a set of drivers that large to move at a sensible pace. But Rapido have done that, and full speed. Ooh, wow, it sounds so healthy as it runs. So quiet and smooth. So it can do those high-speed express services as well. Marvellous. Right. Now, what's the torque like? Let's try that. Finger in front of the buffers. 50%. Yeah, doesn't care. You can see the weird situation we've got here where that rear set of wheels is turning as well. But yeah, that's brilliant. And I think we've already seen it crawl really. But let's try a dedicated crawl and just see what that's like. Again, we'll try this later once it's running, but straight out of the box, easing up. It's moving, I think. I think it's moving. Let's try it a bit more. Yeah, it's definitely moving now. Well, it's stopped. A bit more. Yeah, that's crazy. I've never seen a wheel or set of wheels that large move this slowly. So slowly, in fact, that it's hard to tell whether they are moving. But yeah, they are. And a smooth acceleration. Ooh, one of the best I've ever seen. Golly. That's insane. Wow. I just love the way it looks at that speed. Look how smooth it is. And the acceleration is gorgeous. Right. So with that, let's see how it gets on around the track. 50% speed. Let's run this in. All right. It's first curve. Yeah, beautiful. Not noticing a slowdown. What about the second radius? Not much. Maybe a bit of a slowdown. But yeah, this is its first lap. So now I'm going to let this run in completely, 30 minutes in either direction, and we'll see what it's like when it's fully warmed up and run in. But yeah, so far this performance is exquisite. It looks great, it's built well, and it runs well too. So that's the kind of holy trinity, I think, isn't it? The holy trinity of model railways. But yeah, I am most happy with this. And you know, I've waited a lot of years to get one. I'm so glad that this has proved to be every bit as great as I've heard, and not a disappointment. Wow. Right, so running in is going to commence. I'll see you in just a second. All right then, folks. Well, that is running in complete. And yeah, that went really well. It's a beautiful runner. Never hesitating, never derailing, never cutting out. Absolutely spotless and perfectly smooth at all times as well. Right, so before, did not realise this had firebox lighting, but it does, so let me show you that. Yeah, it's a very, very subtle effect, quite easy to miss, but there is just that faint orange glow around the firebox door, which I love. That's the first time I've seen something done quite like that, and it's quite effective as well, bit better than the full glare, I suppose, of the completely open firebox door. So yeah, like that. The other thing then is the pulling power. Yeah, it's not great. As suspected, this is not a brilliantly balanced model, with a lot of the weight being taken by the front bogie. So the tractive effort came in at 0.14 newtons, which is about 12 coaches on straight and level track. But just as an experiment, I removed the front bogie and did that test again, and the tractive effort doubled. Yeah, 0.29 newtons, and at least with the tender connected, the loco did not fall forward. It was still reasonably stable on these two sets of driving wheels. So I do think the balance of this model could have been better. So I think what I would have done is made the smoke box and the cylinders out of plastic. That would be lighter, that would shift the centre of gravity backwards, and that would mean that a lighter spring could have been used on this front bogie, just to stop the loco tipping forwards, but focusing the weight on these drivers. Yeah, 0.14 newtons is okay, but the loco is so heavy, but a lot of that weight is just being wasted because it's being supported by the front bogie. But yeah, otherwise it's okay, the tractive effort's not terrible, and it's a very good job indeed that these rear wheels are driven, because they're actually doing most of the work. It doesn't seem to be much weight at all on the main drivers. Anyway, with that in mind, I've set up these 4 Eleni Artiques. Not gone too crazy with this, but I think if she can haul those okay up Gordon's Hill, then the pulling power is adequate. Remember, this is not an A3 or an A4 or a Big Bertha. It's not going to be as mighty a hauler as much later steam locos. Anyway, let me show you what the speed is like now. I'll run by at 50, see if that's changed at all. Here we go, half power. No, I would say that's probably about the same. And of course, like I say, it's still got the ability to do those express speeds if you want to. So great range of speeds. And that of course did, I say did because I've not tried it since running in, but it did include the crawl. So let's see if that's still the case. There you go, look how slow that is. Astonishing. And the way that you can smoothly accelerate is just gorgeous as well. Let's try it in reverse. Let's pull it into shot a bit better. Yeah. And it maintains it as well, look. Doesn't kind of cut out and die. It keeps going. That's because of all the pickups. And I guess the good quality motor as well. Smooth acceleration. The smoothest I think I've ever seen, at least in recent memory. Astonishing. Yeah, it is mesmerising to watch. Love it. Right, so with that, let's test the couplings. Well, the rear coupling anyway. And let's see what this looks like with a bit of a train. Right, can I do this steadily? Now, we are using different couplings here because my Hornby teaks are pretty old, but even so, that's worked, hasn't it? So the couplings are at the right height. Excellent. So with that, can she haul 4 teak coaches? I would expect so. But here we go, still beautifully smooth. And we'll go for about 50. And there you go, off she goes. Right, so see which other single wheelers you can spot on the track today. On the middle line, I've got what I think is the other most recent British single wheeler that's been commercially available. And I say recent, this is obviously dating back about 50 years or so. It's the Hornby Dean single. Very beautiful, of course, but far inferior in terms of sort of features and details and such, as nicely as this one has been painted. And yeah, it doesn't run quite as happily. But it's okay, there it is. And then on the inside line, we have my single wheeler, the Problem class. This is the one that I built and designed. And this is the reason that I know it's possible to balance a single wheeler a little bit better than the Stirling single. Because look, this looks like a very, very front heavy locomotive, doesn't it? But it's not, that is an illusion. The centre of gravity is right between the two rear axles, which are both driven. And as such, the front wheels here actually bear none of the loco's weight. They're effectively almost dummies. Their range of motion is very carefully constrained so that they don't come off the track, but essentially you could take those wheels out and the loco would not run any differently. And that's without a die-cast body as well. If I had access to die-casting technology, I could have souped it up. But even so, yeah, the traction's fine on this. Anyway, let's catch up with the Stirling. All right, here it goes, making good speed at 50%. Any slowing down? Well, it's slowing down slightly, but it didn't seem to be caused by the curves, so I suppose that's just the slight incline. And as you can see, oh, I think so. Yeah, it should be all right now. It is powerful enough to haul 4 coaches. So as much as I don't think it's brilliantly balanced, there isn't a massive problem with the pulling power. Although I do think it's a shame that the massive weight of this model hasn't been put to better use. You know, this could be more than twice as powerful with some better balancing. But as it is, it's heavy enough so that even without being perfectly balanced, it still hauls at least somewhat realistically sized trains, which is good. But other than that, yeah, this loco is just mesmerising to watch. I don't know what it is because there's no massively complex valve gear on it, as much as the cylinders look great as they actuate. But there's just something about the way this looks. I think the paint job, the smoothness of the run, and yeah, the motion of the connecting rods as well, that really just makes this such a treat to watch. So yeah, I think unfortunately the Jones Goods has been dethroned. For a matter of weeks, that was the best Rapido loco I'd ever seen. I think now though, all things considered, this one probably is a little bit better. A lot of that's personal preference. I mean, the Jones Goods is outstanding as well, but yeah, in terms of what I think, I find myself liking this one a little bit more. And it's easy to see why. Just look at this thing. Gorgeous. Well done, Rapido. Let's have some ratings then for Rapido's latest release of the Stirling single with the new tender. And this loco is really, really something. One of the best I've seen for a long time. So level of detail is absolutely stunning. In fact, to the point where I cannot fault it. So 5-star. Paintwork and decoration, sublime, spot on. Love the finish of the handrails. That's a big improvement over even the likes of the Jones Goods, which is also new. It's got so much going for it. Detailed cab with lighting, even though it doesn't look like it will, that's impressive. Accessories are great as well. Real chains for the buffer beams, screw-link couplings. We've got sprung buffers, the valve gear between the frames, the detail of the wheels even. Oh yeah, really, really something this. 5-star. Performance, similarly, I cannot fault. This is the perfect runner. At the slow speed, it's excellent. It handles curves without any problems. It's perfectly stable on the track, I will give it that. What can you say? I cannot find a way to fault this. An excellent top-class performer. Pulling power, not as good. So this loco is heavier than the Bachmann precedent. It is heavier than a Hornby J36, just to use a couple of examples, but it is weaker than both of them. Not a particularly well balanced model this. A lot of the loco's weight is borne by the front bogie, which is understandable. A single wheeler is a difficult design to get right, but yeah, I think that could have been a little bit better based on my own experience. But still, 12 coaches or 0.14 newtons on straight and level track. That's not too bad. As we see, it's certainly enough to haul about 4 or 5 coaches. If you've got tighter curves and sort of heavy-ish gradients though, obviously this thing is going to struggle. Mechanism then, I've given 4-star. Overall, the quality of the mechanism is excellent. So we've got lots of pickups, proper bearings, more than just 2 driving wheels, which is kind of essential for something like this. Great quality motor with a flywheel, lighting as well, and relatively easy access to the DCC socket. It just loses a star for serviceability though. That lack of access to the sort of pickups, bearings, axles, gears, that's not great if you want a model like this to last a lifetime. Yeah, I'd prefer better serviceability, but overall, yeah, it's a good quality mechanism, and that certainly shows through in the performance. Quality then, I've given 4.5 star. Yeah, this is a top quality model. It's almost entirely made of metal, yet the fidelity of the moulding is still there. The quality of the paint job, top notch, wouldn't fault that. This is what they mean when they say museum quality. Yeah, it certainly is. No visible glue that I saw, no details dropping off or wonky, really, really good. I am knocking 0.5 star off here for the fact that the splasher screws were not included. Now I know that's probably not strictly a quality issue, but I don't know where else to put it, and I don't think it really fits into any other category either. So yeah, cool feature, needed to be completed by having all the parts included. So 0.5 star off for that. Value for money then, the full RRP is £249.95 for this, and at the retailers this costs £212.45 DCC ready silent. Now obviously right off the bat that is a lot of money. Anything over £200 these days is a lot for a locomotive, I think, but in this case you do get what you pay for. This is one of the most beautifully detailed models I've ever seen. It's got one of the best paint jobs I've ever seen. It's feature packed, it's got all of that detail. So while this is not a bargain and I'm not giving it 5 star on value, I do think it's worth the money, and I do think for the most part £212, as expensive as that is actually a fair price. So yeah, 4 star. Overall then, that is 8.58 out of 10, or a grade of A. Lots of grade A's this year so far, but once again, this is well deserved. And into the logbook it goes for 00 scale, where it is top place above the bullied leader. And whereas the bullied leader will take some beating in how bad it is, I think this loco is going to take some beating for the top spot in the logbook here. But yeah, wonderful model. Can I recommend this one? Yes, of course. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for my review of the Rapido Stirling single. All these years waiting to try one, years wondering what this model was going to be like. Was it worth the wait? Yes, it really was. Is this model everything I hoped it would be over all these years? Yes, and more actually. People are not kidding when they say this is the best loco they've ever seen. I don't know if it's the best loco I've ever seen, but it's certainly among them. It really is. So yeah, wonderful. Anyway, what do you think about the Stirling single? Have you got one of these? If so, let me know what your experience is. If not, what do you think based on the video footage here? Do you have a different version of the Stirling single? If so, what's that like? How is it different? And if you've got one with the larger tender, what's that like? That's still something that I've not experienced. But anyway, this one with the small tender, absolutely fantastic. So if you want to try one of these, affiliate links down in the description. I can point to those with confidence now that I know I can recommend this loco. And thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you enjoyed the loco if you decided to get one as well. And I'll see you again very soon for another review. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.